Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Gentlemen, you are in for a treat today because the technique I'm about to share with you is one of the simplest, most practical, and potent techniques that you can use to amplify and dream bigger in your business, in your relationships, and in designing your future. And it's called the Walt Disney model, the dreamer, the realist, and the critic. And this is a technique that I learned in NLP when I was getting trained about 7 or 8 years ago. I've been using it regularly for individual practice and also in running group workshops. It's great for teams. I used it in the mastermind recently and the guys loved it. And I'm going to be sharing a story with you about how this model helped me to close a one-on-one coaching contract that's paying $150,000 over this next year. And I'll be sharing that story with you. So let's pull back the lens a little bit here. One of the things that I've always admired about dreamers, these big visionaries, is the fact that they can create the seemingly impossible. Right? Walt Disney is a great example of this, right? Like he walks into a boggy marsh, a swampland in Florida, and he envisions a Disneyland, a Disney World. Right? Like a place where a castle is going to be rising out from the ashes of this swampland that no one wanted to buy or build upon. And he had this vision that it would be a place where time stops, where the outside world no longer exists. And that when you come in here, you are actually going to be living and breathing a fairy tale. That's why Disney World is one of the most magical places on earth, right? You look at someone like an Elon Musk who's like, yeah, we're going to colonize Mars. And he has like a space company, launching rockets and spaceships into outer space. He has, he is right now the richest man in the world because he's got these other companies too, like Tesla and the solar panel companies. And it's like, why do these people have such an ability to dream and envision? And then I look at my life and some of the shit that I get caught up with. Right? Like sometimes I get bogged down in a sales funnel or who's commenting on my social media posts or, like just the mundane bullshit of my life that seems to corral my energy and attention. What's the difference between me and those guys? Right? Well, it's where I'm putting my time and my energy. These guys are dreamers and they've learned how to spend their time there and then how to bring their dreams into reality. I spend far more time in the realistic world and in the critical world, as most people do. So I became committed to dreaming bigger and learning how to do so, right? So one of the things, and I like to share with you stories about where I'm eating my own cooking, right? 2 things that I've been working on recently. Over the last 90 days, we had a theme in our mastermind called courage, right? Every quarter we have a theme. And courage was the theme for that quarter. And courage is my theme for the entire year of 2021. Having the courage to dream big and then to go after 100% of what it is that you want, right? Not to like dilute it, not to sand it down into like what you think is realistic or what's possible, but to go after 100% of what you want. And that may require failing temporarily or feeling the fear, right? And so I decided to commit to playing a bigger game. That was one thing I was working on. The other thing I've been working on is to become less rigid and to stop being so narrowly focused on the things that I want, but also to pay attention to opportunities that come my way that maybe on the surface don't appear to be exactly what I want, that may be a distraction, but to actually listen to it before dismissing it, to seeing if there's broader potential. So of course, an opportunity to practice this work presents itself. And I get a phone call from a man named Reggie. We're going to call him Reggie. I've had too many Ricks. We're protecting someone's identity. This time we're going to call him Reggie. So Reggie calls me up out of the blue, a man I've known for over a decade, a guy in his early 50s. And he said, hey, Dominic, I've been heads down in this role that I've been in for over a couple of years now. He's a big shot at a company with thousands of employees underneath him. And he's on all the succession plans for top tier roles, CEO and these other things. And he's like, it's time for me to look at preparing myself for this next big thing. I don't know what it is. And I want your help in figuring that out by July. And this call came in like November or something like that, early December, late November of 2020. And my initial instinct and reaction was, no, I'm not a coach anymore. I've given up one-on-one coaching so that I can help men, legions of men discover and live the great man within them. I want to run these masterminds. We got this 10 million man vision going on. I can't do this one-on-one thing. And I'm not really interested in helping someone find their next role. It's just, to me, it's too small potatoes. But instead of shutting it down, it was like, listen to the opportunity that came here, ask some questions, and stay open. So that's what I did. So I started asking Reggie these deeper questions about what caused you to call me? What about now? Why the time? What were the feelings inside of you that prompted this question? Because I also know that he's someone who's pretty close to the vest and likes to figure out a lot of things on his own. So I was honored that he came to me. And what I came to learn was he was really inspired by witnessing some of the bold moves that I'd made, and changing the course of my trajectory. He wasn't interested in doing something so dramatic, but he trusted the fact that I'd gone through the process. I'd asked those questions. He wanted to find the fire that I had found. In asking some of the deeper questions, I learned that he, like a lot of other guys, have a lot of responsibilities on his shoulders, have a lot of people looking to him as a leader, but on the inside, kind of questioning why he doesn't feel the passion or the vigor or the determination or the wake up and get up and go that he used to feel, and feeling lit up by his life like he once did and not knowing how to get at it. So once I started to get under the hood there, I realized that, he's a microcosm of all of the guys that I'm out there trying to speak to. So all of a sudden this started to feel a lot more in alignment. And I said, you know what, Reggie, I don't do this one-on-one work anymore, but there's something here that if you're interested in keeping this thread of conversation open, let me sit with this and then let's talk again in 2 weeks and maybe we'll have a deeper dive. And he said, okay, that sounds good to me. He felt really good about the conversation. So what I ended up doing that weekend was I decided to tap into some of my dreamer mode mentality, like this Walt Disney model of dreaming. One of the ways that I do this, guys, is by working with psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in what's known as magic mushrooms. Now, I've never talked on this podcast about the profound role that psychedelics have played in my inner work journey, in my spiritual journey, because I want to have a real thorough and intelligent conversation about psychedelics and the life-changing transcendent powers that they offer, but also the destructive power they can play if you don't understand how you're using them, if you're not informed about the setting, the dosage. So we're going to be having a much broader conversation, a deeper conversation about how to use psychedelics responsibly. But I've been working with them for over 5 years now, and they've been a transcendent part of my inner work and spiritual journey. And I used mushrooms quite a bit last year during the pandemic when we were locked up. And they became kind of a ritual for me on a weekly basis to check in on my life and to dream bigger. That has created quite a bit of the shifts that you've seen here in the inner work and the communities that we've been building have been directly responsible from the work that I've been using with these mushrooms. Well, that weekend I decided to go into ceremony. I use mushrooms as medicine, not as a way of getting fucked up, right? So I call them medicines and I work with them in ceremony. So I sat down 3 or 4 hours to take a look at this opportunity that was brought to me. And what mushrooms allow me to do is to quiet the part of my mind that's always critical, that's always talking, that's overbearing, and to access deeper parts of my mind. If you have ever seen a brain map of a regular brain and a brain on psilocybin, a regular brain has just a few parts of your brain talking to each other. The neural pathways, you could see maybe 20 different parts of your brain talking to each other. Psilocybin brain has hundreds of parts of your brain talking to each other. It's giving you the ability of looking at just a picture of a Ferrari is your normal brain. And then a psilocybin brain is being able to stand looking at the Ferrari, touch the Ferrari, get behind the wheel of the Ferrari, drive it, back it up, it gives you the multi-dimensional experience. Whereas, just looking at a picture of it is only a diluted part of it, right? That's why I work with these mushrooms. And what I had a chance to witness in looking at this scenario that Reggie brought to me and him was that I was able to see the entire tapestry of mankind and look at how so many men, tens of millions of men, are exactly like Reggie. Getting to this place of middle age where they're successful, have everything that they've wanted on the surface, but inside the fire is dimming and they're so disconnected, don't know how to get at it. And need a severe wake-up call in like a real powerful way over the course of an extended period of time in order for that fucking armor to come off, for the walls to come down, for the patterns to be obliterated. It's going to take like a hammer and an anvil banging through a block of stone over a lot of different time periods from a lot of different angles to actually create the crack. So I could see that he was like almost a representative sent to me of all mankind, that if I were to be able to reach him and get through him, that the work I'd be doing with him would be extremely valuable and relevant to the 10 million man journey. So now I'm excited. I set up this second call with him and I asked him this series of questions that go so deep that like took him off guard. I was asking him questions like, what's it like to be you? Take me inside your world on a daily basis. What's it like to wake up like you? What's your anxiety feel like? What does your heart feel like? And, these questions were like, what the fuck? And, he didn't have great answers for a lot of them, but he started to just, like open up. What was it like when you felt that fire burning in your 20s and 30s? Tell me what that was like. What was the vigor? What does it feel like now? How do you fuck today versus how you fucked when you were in your 20s? Holy shit. These are deeper questions. So all of a sudden he's like, I don't know what the hell I'm getting into, but this feels pretty good. So, I'm like, okay, let's keep the fire going here. I didn't know exactly where this thing was planning on going, but it felt good. Follow the energy, have the courage, right, to continue with this. So we set up like these recurring every couple of weeks, Friday afternoon, 4:00. We're going to be talking. And each week I would go into mushroom ceremony, and a part of my work would be envisioning what could be something that he needs, what would be, something that like he and all of the other men, right? Like that, this is the important part, guys. It wasn't just about him. It was about him and how he could, and our work could serve the community of men, right? You guys who are listening to the podcast, the guys who are in the mastermind, the men who have not yet found us. That's how I was holding all of this. And then these amazing ideas started to come. And one of them came as a result of having a conversation with Callie Simon, my chief operating officer, who was like, hey, what if you were to send him like some mailer at home every couple of weeks that just like surprised and delighted him? And I was like, oh yeah, that's one way of helping him break through kind of the ordinary way of living. Well, we went online and I asked Callie to search for skulls, human skulls. And we found this like beautifully designed human skull, and we wrapped it up, put in this like cool box, and we found a quote online from Mark Twain that says, we fear death because we want to be invigorated by life. Something along those lines. I probably butchered that quote, but we fear death. Oh yeah, we fear death because we crave the feeling of life. And then I wrote a little like note underneath that. It said, one of the reasons why that you may be thinking more about dying and thinking more about death, because that had come up in our conversations, was because you're feeling an absence of vigor or life in your life, and you want to like bring that spark back. So we sent that to him. And when he got it, he was like, whoa, what the fuck? This is awesome, beautifully designed skull. He's like, what do you want me to do with this? I said, keep it out on a daily basis. I want you to see it to remind you that moment to moment that we are going to die, and that every moment is precious because of that. He was like, wow, okay. 2 weeks later, we sent him a 50-pound block of stone and a hammer and an anvil. And there was a There was it's not like a poem, but like it's a story of a stonecutter that used to be in the San Antonio Spurs basketball team locker room, and they were like big time champions. I think they won like 4 titles in 5 years, something like that. In their locker room, it said, "Every time I get discouraged, I think about the story of a stonecutter who sits banging away at his stone dutifully. And after 999 hits, there's not so much as a crack in the stone. But on the 1,000th hit, the stone breaks in two. And I realized it wasn't the 1,000th hit that caused that crack, but the 999 that preceded it." And then I wrote him a note underneath, and I said, "Your personal development and the work that we are about to do is going to feel quite a bit like the stonecutter banging away with very little evidence that this stuff is working. But you've had 5 decades of your life building up a pretty sturdy stone block. It's going to take a lot of hits. And I can assure you that every swing of that hammer is working. And eventually, we're going to crack this thing in two." He's like, "What? That's awesome. What do you want me to do with this?" "Keep it in plain sight. I want you to see the stone. I want you to see the hammer and anvil. I want you to see the skull on a regular basis to remind you of this work that we're doing." So this went on and on for a series of weeks. And then I shared with him at one point, I'm like, "Listen, there's going to come a decision point where I'm going to ask you, you're going to have a chance. I'm going to put down a proposal where you're going to have an opportunity to go take this in one of 2 directions. The one direction is going to be that you just want to find someone who can help you to navigate that next career path. And if that's your case, that's great. That's awesome. I'm not your guy. But I have someone who can work with you in that path. Option number 2 is if you want to go down a path of truly figuring out what's going to light you up in your life, that you can walk this path of being purpose-driven, having a life of meaning, building the table that you want to sit at for the rest of your life, and being as engaged and fired up about your life as you can tell that I am about mine, then I'm your guy. But that's going to require a big physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial commitment. A shit your pants kind of financial investment that's going to end up being on the table. I need you to understand that this is where we're building towards. Do you get that?" And there was kind of like an excitement on his side. He's like, yeah, I get it. Let's go. So a few more weeks go by, and I call up his wife, and I say, "I need to plot a plan where I can kidnap your husband." And by the way, this idea came to me like during one of these mushroom journeys, right? And in the mushroom journey, I had this vision that I was going to go into his house in the middle of the night with a flashlight and give him this fucking wake-up call, shake out his shit, so that like he could, boom, like be totally discombobulated, scared, and then say, "You've got 3 minutes to wash your face, brush your teeth, and get downstairs. We're time to do our work." I'm thinking like The Game from, Michael Douglas, the movie, and she was like, "What the fuck?" When I told her these ideas. And she was like, "Okay, I see where you're going with this. Can we dial it back a few notches?" And she was a saint, man. Like, she was on board with wanting to create an experience for him that was like a wake-up call. But she was afraid that maybe like he would beat the shit out of me when he woke up or whatever. And I was afraid that maybe he had a firearm or would have a heart attack. So anyway, we walked it back a little bit, and we created this diversion where he thought that on a Saturday afternoon, he was going to have to go and like move furniture for his mother-in-law. When instead I drove to where he lives, which is 2 hours away. And he knows that I'm nowhere near him. And I came and I intercepted him at his home. He was totally shocked. I said, "Come with me." I kidnapped him. We went to this like immaculate old bed and breakfast that Callie found that's like 150 years old. We rented out the entire place, went into this like old school study, this library that was beautifully furnished and designed. And then I ran him through like this 5 or 6 hour experience where he got to meet the great man within him, ran him through the meditation of the great man. And by the time that it was over, there's so many more details I'm leaving out here, guys, but I don't want this thing to go on and on and on. I handed him this like treasure box that Callie had found online, and he opened it up, and inside was a scroll on this beautiful stationery that she had gotten made for me. And we'd stamped with like wax, right? with like my initial on it. So it looked like kind of like a Game of Thrones thing inside this treasure box. And inside were 5 agreements that I'd written up around, if we're going to do this work, here are some of the agreements that I need you to surrender to. You know, like, you've got to let me in more closely than anyone you've ever let in your life. You know, there's a number of them. And when he agreed to all of them, then I laid out the proposal. And I said to him, this is going to be a full year's worth of work where we are going to be connected on the daily basis on some level. We're going to be doing deep, intense work like we just did. That's going to require you make this the number one priority in your life alongside your family and your work. This is it. You're going to clear the space. And it's going to cost $150,000 for you to do it. Are you in? And he just looked at me. He didn't give me an answer in that moment because he had to go check this with his wife. And actually, one of the things I told him, implored him to do, was to have the conversation with his wife about this, to make sure that she was cool with the space that he was going to need for doing this and to free up the funds for doing it. But later in that week, a few days later, he said, I'm fucking in. And when we talked about it, guys, he was not scared, but lit the fuck up. And here's the other thing. I gave him no details about what the $150,000 was going to buy him. I didn't put a proposal together. I even told him when I laid it down that this is a decision that you're going to have to make from your heart and your gut and your intuition. I'm giving you no details because a decision of this size can't be made from the mind. And I shared with him the famous Jeff Bezos quote. Jeff Bezos said, all of my most important decisions in life have come from instinct, intuition, guts, and heart. Not data, because data hasn't been available. If you have data available, great. But most of the most important decisions in my life have not had data available, so it's come from intuition, guts, and instinct and heart. And I asked him, Reggie, to make that decision. And he did. And when we talked about it, there was no trepidation about the money he was about to invest. He said, as I laid out my decision-making process, he goes, I'd be an idiot not to. Guys, can you think about that? Taking a man on a journey where he's now investing $150,000 for something he has no fucking clue what it looks like. He asked no questions. He didn't negotiate. He was a yes, and an enthusiastic yes to all of it because of the experience that I'd given him the 2 or 3 months leading up to that. Like, he had built the trust and the faith, and he had opened and surrendered to the process where we're now going to be brothers going on this journey for the next 12 months of his life so that he can have the next 30 years of his life exactly the way, bigger than he ever could have dreamed of. And that's what he said to me. I'm making this decision for the next 12 months so that I can have the life I want to live for the next 30 years. Wow. Now, for the 3 months that I was going through this process of dreaming in this Walt Disney model, I can't tell you how many times my realist and my critic wanted to talk me out of it, wanted to whittle me down, wanted to tell me that you're crazy, or that like he's going to look at you and think you're an idiot, or think that like you've lost your marbles. There were so many times where I wanted to back out or give up on this. I'm not even kidding you. Multiple times where I was right there ready to throw away the towel. Now, the way the dreamer, the realist, and the critic model works is that you actually step into each of those spaces individually and you stay there for a sustained period of time. So, for example, the reason why I haven't been able to dream as big as Elon Musk or as big as a Walt Disney is because instead of spending enough time in the dreamer state where I just get to dream as big as I want, my realist and critic come in and have shit to say about it, constantly short-circuiting the magnitude of my dreams. But when I was able to go into these mushroom ceremonies and then just dream for 3 or 4 hours unimpeded, as big as I possibly could imagine, what ended up shifting inside of me was there was a sense of knowing on a deeper level that I could go there, that I had the capabilities of going there and creating these experiences that were fun and invigorating for me to create and for him to experience. like the mystery, allowing it to just like reveal itself to me and to us to keep playing with it. And it's been like amazing for both of us. The longer and longer I spent in the dreamer state on a regular basis, the bigger these ideas became and the deeper sense of certainty that I had the capacity to make it happen. And then eventually when I came back down into like, off the psychedelic and into my realistic way of being, then I stepped into the realist. And the realist's job is to start to to think about, okay, well, how long does the program need to be? Is it 5 years? Is it 2 years? Is it 1 year? Oh, okay, let's put some structure around it. 3 months doesn't sound like enough. Yeah, 1 year feels great. Cool. The realist is the one that comes up with the investment. Is $500,000? No, that seems like way too much. Is $50,000? That's not nearly enough for the amount of work I'm going to put in. What's the right amount of money for him to feel it, but also like for me to feel value, like to get the value? 150. Boom. That's where the realist comes in, right? And then the critic is the last place you step into to say, okay, where are all the holes? Where are all the questions that he could have? What are all the ways that he could pick this apart? Or where are there all the things that I'm missing? Maybe because like I dreamt too big and even not too big, but dreamt and, like where are the things, my blind spots? And then I spend some coordinated time in the critic spot and writing out those and then overcoming those obstacles. The key here though, fellas, is when you are in each of those spaces, you're not allowed to pollute or contaminate with the other energies. If you're in the dreamer and you're spending an hour just dreaming, you're not allowed to bring the critic energy or the realist energy in the dreamer. You're polluting it. You're only allowed to dream. Here's an example of that. I ran this exercise with the mastermind the other day in a short format. And one of the guys in our group, his name is Robert, and I have permission to share this story. He wants to build like a compound for men to do inner work, kind of like a big gathering space, right? With retreat facilities for men around the world to come do this. And so I called him in to do this like dreamer exercise. Okay, Robert, close your eyes. I want you to envision the compound of your dreams. What do you see? He's like, man, I see these big open fields and I see these huge structures, like these A-frame structures with lots of men gathered around. Great. What else do you see? I see a lot of guys from all different walks of life, shapes, sizes, races, religions, countries around the world. Cool. What else are they doing? Oh, we're dancing. We've got these bonfires. How big are the bonfires? Fucking huge. Great. Like what's the energy like? Oh, the men are feeling connected and passionate and vibrant. Everyone's like feeling connected to their warrior energy. And I can see the rest of the men in the mastermind as he's dreaming. They're like lit the fuck up. And I go, is there like a celebrity or an influencer of some kind that like loves this place or champions it, that like, brings other people here? And he goes, oh, The Rock. He's like, I see The Rock in there, like doing his thing. And I like loved that. All the guys in the mastermind loved it as well. And we only did this for like 2 minutes of dreaming. But all of a sudden, like when we brought Robert back, like the fire in his eyes, like the enthusiasm in the group of men was palpable. And we're like, how do we build this? I wanted to be a part of how we build this. Now, is it realistic at this stage to think about like that thing and The Rock coming? Of course it's not. Critic would tell you, who the fuck are you? But if you don't contaminate that space and just stay in the dreamer mode, then you can continue to build that energy, that enthusiasm to the place where it's so fucking delicious that you can't not build it. That's how these guys, like a Walt Disney or an Elon Musk or plenty of others, bring this stuff into fruition. So, where are you allowing the realist or the critic to shrink the biggest areas of your life that are possible? This example of me taking a phone call where I could have been a critic that said, nope, not what we're looking at doing here, and shutting this down, turning into the dreamer that helped me to turn this into a $150,000 piece of business for me, and also a journey that we get to take this man on that is going to change the course of his life and the 30 years that follow. All of the communities that he serves and leads are going to raise because of it. His work is going to help to impact all of the groups that like we're doing here, because we're going to be creating rituals and ceremonies and experiences that we'll be able to use inside the masterminds and all of the retreats that we're going to be running. Do you see how this shit works, guys? You're just dreaming way, way, way too small. Or you're not allowing the dreamer to show up. The realist and the critic are getting in the way. So take this this dreamer, realist, and critic model and spend specific time in each. But I would say triple the amount of time that you spend in the dreamer than you do in the realist or critic. Because in your everyday waking life, the realist and critic get front stage and the dreamer's stuffed in the trunk. So set some time aside to just dream. You can journal. You can dream with your business teams, like your leadership team. You can dream with your romantic partner. Dream about the sex life you want to have. Dream about the future you want to build together. Dream about, like what your vacations or your work-life balance would look like. Just dream, 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 dream. And only after you've gotten so deliciously hungry for that dream, then you start to put the pen to paper about Realist. Work on that. Come into the Facebook group. Tell us about what you're dreaming about. Get us excited. Pop a video in there. Show a picture of something that you're building. Let us know what's going on. Come to the Great Man Within Facebook group and let us know. And as always, you can come and join us in the digital mastermind, or reach out to me if you're interested in joining the 20-person mastermind that's going to be kicking off in May. And I'll put information in the show notes for how you can get in touch with all of those things and how you can start to dream bigger in your life so that you can live the great man within you.